Family really enjoys Chex Mix at the holidays. Well, they used to enjoy Chex Mix. And Chex Mix, made the traditional way, has a ton of carbs. It has wheat cereal and, well, you know what's in it. And some people call it trash, if you know what I'm talking about, the trash Chex Mix. And it is trash the way it's made. But I figured out a way to make it low carb. And I can't wait to share that with you because, again, that's a holiday tradition for us. Okay, I'm going to use pork rinds. Now, if you don't like pork rinds, just hear me out. We're going to transform these guys. Okay, so what I've done is I've taken different types of pork rinds. And this is one of my absolute favorite pork rinds. This is by a company here in North Carolina called Carolina Country Snacks, and they have a popcorn crackling brand that is fantastic. And it looks like this when you open it. Now this is 1 3-ounce bag, but you can see they're generally small pieces and they're really, really crunchy. And so they're a great substitute for the cereal. So anyway, I'm gonna put this in here. This is 1 3-ounce bag, and there are a couple bigger pieces I'm going to break up, but these are really crunchy, and you can probably hear the snap as I'm breaking them up. Again, you just want them basically bite-sized, and think more of a dainty bite size, not a my husband's bite size. He takes way too big a bite. But anyway, so I'm starting with that. That's 3 ounces of the popcorn cracklings. See what you can find in your area. I know that Carolina Country Snacks are available online. I'm not affiliated with a company, don't make any money from that. Max has fried pork rinds, and Max is a little easier to find, and they're very similar. This has a stronger pork taste, so if you don't care for pork rinds, I don't know if this will be ideal for you, but the best place to find pork rinds is convenience stores. So if you don't think you have them in your grocery store, check a local convenience store, especially a sports type store. Okay, so to this 3 ounces of the cracklings, I'm going to add these guys. Now this is the original pork rind. Here's an unopened bag. I always keep my cabinet well stocked, and again, I find them at a convenience store. These guys are big when you pull them out of the package. See how big they are? So you get a sense of the difference. These are little and crispy, and these guys are softer and they're larger. They are great for snacking, but they're also great if you break them up, and we're just gonna break them up like this. Break them up and use them in the pork rind. So you've got this softer, it's still crispy, but you've got this softer, larger texture. It's more cloud-like in your mouth, the mouthfeel. And then you've got the crunchy, more hearty, substantive crunch of this. Now, I don't know about you guys, but when I used to make the high carb version, I would like triple or quadruple the recipe because we loved it. And my brother especially loved it. So when the holidays came and they were coming to our house, I would make, like I said, a quadruple batch for him, so that not only did he have some to enjoy at our house, but that he and his wife could take back. And by the way, that is my brother Stuart. He and his wife live in South Carolina with a precious baby boy. And he is the one who actually convinced me to take the videos I had been making for my classes and my support group, my local group, online and do YouTube. So you have him to blame or thank for getting me to do this. Okay, so I would go ahead and crunch all those up. I'm not going to waste time there. I've already done one. This is 1.5 ounce bag. So what I would do is I would use 2 bags of this kind and probably 1 bag of the real crunchy, but it doesn't matter. Use whatever you think your family would enjoy, and certainly if you can't find these, you know, there's a brand, Baconette, that's fairly easy to find in grocery stores everywhere. So there are lots of brands, and that's a very mild brand, the Baconette. Some are just stronger than others. Okay, pork rinds, if you look at the nutritional profile, pork rinds usually, and you want the cracklings that are just pork rinds and salt. I don't like to use the flavored pork rinds, and I'll tell you about that later, but you want just pork rinds and salt. They are really 0 carb, well, as 0 carb as foods get. So you don't have to worry about the carbs. They're great in terms of protein and fat. It's 8 grams of protein and 5 of fat. So the profile is really good. And of course, we're going to add butter, so we're adding more fat. But nuts are usually part of this mix, nuts and things like pretzels and stuff like that. So when you think about nuts, nuts are not carb-free. Now, I tend to count total carbs. And so I looked up, and I want to make sure I'm telling you this right, I looked up 100 grams of nuts, and almonds actually have, for 100 grams, 22 carbs and 100 grams, which is about a cup. And I did grams so that I could do like comparisons. Pecan halves have 14 grams. They're really the lowest carb so they're great value for your low carb buck. So I'm adding 100 grams, roughly 1 cup, and I did weigh them, of pecans to this. And you can see I'm kind of breaking them up. These are pecan pieces. Some are halves, and that's kind of big. So I want them to get a really good disbursement. I want them smaller than that. So I'm putting in 100 grams of pecans. Now, our pork rinds added basically 0 carbs. Our 100 grams of pecans is going to add 14 carbs to this. The macadamia nuts, I decided to use macadamia nuts. And you know what? I looked up the hazelnuts, but not the macadamia nuts. I'm going to have to look up the carb count on macadamia nuts. Now, these are big. Ideally, you would take them and slice them in half. I didn't have time to do that. And so I did a ½ cup of macadamia nuts. We love these. And again, ideally, I would have crunched them up, at least half them. These are from Trader Joe's. And then I've got peanuts. Now, peanuts are a legume. Not everybody can eat peanuts. If you can't eat peanuts, leave them out. Put in more pecans. But peanuts are, in terms of low carb value, 16 total carbs per 100 grams. So they're actually lower in carbs than almonds. So you kind of have to pick your poison sometimes. Which would you rather avoid? One of the reasons I'm using the hazelnut, or excuse me, not hazelnuts, the macadamia nuts, is the texture. Hazelnuts, pecan, and peanuts really have different textures from each other. And that's what makes the Chex Mix so appealing, are the different textures. So 100 grams of peanuts, 100 grams of pecans, and 50 grams of macadamia nuts. I don't want to say that, and I'll have to look up the carbs on those. So we've added roughly 30 carbs with our nuts so far. Now, I'm not going to worry too much about mixing that because I'm going to mix it when I put in the seasoning. And okay, so I did get the butter melted, and I did get a chance to look up macadamia nuts, and believe it or not, they're 14 total carbs per 100 grams, so they're just like pecans. So I used a ½ cup, so we've got roughly 37 total carbs in the nuts in this entire recipe. Now we're going to add, we've got our melted butter. I have 8 tablespoons of melted butter. Feel free to use more if you'd like. I also have 2, make sure I'm telling you the right thing, 2 teaspoons, yes, 2 teaspoons of seasoning salt. Now, actually 1.5, no, 2 teaspoons of seasoning salt. I was debating because it does have some icky ingredients that I don't like, and I'm trying to make this as close to traditional as possible. I will use a substitute for seasoning salt. We use Lowry's. It's not a great option. It does have sugar. So don't use it if you can help it, or if you have a favorite seasoning salt that doesn't have sugar, use that. I'm also going to use 1 teaspoon of garlic powder and a ½ teaspoon of onion powder, not salt, but garlic powder and onion powder. And speaking of salt, I did use some unsalted butter because I figured with the salt of the pork rinds and with the seasoning salt, that was a lot of salt. So I used unsalted butter for this. You can taste it and adjust it to your preferences. Now I'm going to use another controversial ingredient. And this is Worcestershire sauce. Worcestershire does have some molasses, it does have some sugar. I am going to low carb Worcestershire sauce, and because it doesn't have anything in it that we could not do. I could use the Sucrin Fiber Gold for the molasses, and anyway, I've got ideas, and I'm going to be trying to low carb that over the next few weeks, so stay tuned for that. By the way, if you don't subscribe to my channel, please do subscribe, because that way I don't have to worry about trying to notify folks. You'll get the notification via email when I post a new video. Okay, We've mixed up our goodness, and our oven, by the way, is preheating to 250 degrees because we're going to bake this low and slow once we get it mixed. So I've mixed all those wet ingredients. As always, the written recipe will be in the video description. If you're on a desktop computer, you can click on the button that says Show More. It's right underneath the video. So click on Show More, and you'll see the written recipe. If you're on a phone or tablet, it might be a down arrow. It just depends on the device you're on, but that down arrow will give you the written recipe. I'm not great with updating my blog, and honestly, I've kind of given up between the holidays and the busyness of our family. I hope to get it cleaned up and updated soon. No promises. Okay, and I think I see these are homemade pecans. I think I see some shell in there, so I'm going to pull that out. Okay, well, not homemade pecans, but you know what I mean. All right, there's my melted butter, and it's going over everything. You can see I added a little bit at a time while I was talking just to get it mixed really well. And what's going to happen is the pork rinds are going to absorb the moisture, and they're going to get a little soft on you, which is why we're going to bake it. Now my oven's at 250, and what I'm going to do, this is a great thing to bake when you're home and you're doing other things. I'm going to do it kind of low and slow, and I will put it on my baking sheet. And I'm not going to, I could oil the pan. It's really not necessary with all that butter, but I'm going to spread it out and kind of in one a fairly thin layer. So I would rather use more baking sheets than not. You could use glass if you prefer. I'm just getting a nice mix. You can stop and taste it at this point if you're not sure about the seasonings you're using. But I'm going to distribute it fairly evenly. You want to mix some of the bottom with the top because if you'll see, that's where a lot of the butter and stuff got to. And then I'll just put the rest of this in here. So once I get it spread out, it's going in my oven, 250 degrees. You can do it on higher heat, but I get distracted and get busy doing other things, and I can burn stuff sometimes. So if you don't want to risk burning, put it on and use your timer. My oven timer, the one that's built into my oven, is like my best friend when I'm cooking and baking, because I do get distracted by the phone, Facebook, kids, husband, dogs, any number of things. I'm a little easily distracted. Okay, I'm going to spread this out into a single layer. It smells so good, and it's going to make my house smell really good too. And I'm not, I really don't like snacking, and I talk about that. I've talked about that in the groups I'm in on Facebook, because I think your body needs time to, between meals, to do other things besides digest food. I'm not going to, necessarily a proponent of fasting for long periods of time, but I do believe you need to go a minimum of 4 hours between meals just to give your body time. And if you're eating low carb, high fat, your blood sugar levels are stable enough that that should not be a problem for you. But anyway, this I think of more as kind of a meal. And when you look at how we've got this spread out, so here's the first tray and here's the second tray. Remember, between everything, the herbs and everything, we probably have, I'm going to say 40 carbs in all of this. So if you make this into 10 portions, imagine 5 servings here and 5 servings here. If you make it into 10 portions, you're looking at 4 carbs. Now, I try not to go over 7 total carbs per meal. And so this would be something that I might enjoy as part of a meal, like snack, or if I'm gonna snack instead of having a real meal. It's great to take with you to parties because everybody's gonna enjoy it. It's great to have on the buffet table for family and that kind of thing, but you do have to watch how much you eat. You can't just eat the whole thing. But if you imagine fourths, that's a really good serving, and we're going to do fifths. Let's think if we could get 6, if we cut this in half and then did thirds, you're looking at a square about that big. Again, that's a reasonable portion. And if you're able to get 12 servings out of this, you're looking at roughly, 3.5, a little under, a little more than 3 carbs, total carbs. And that's not net carbs, it's total carbs. So let me throw this in the oven, and then we'll take a peek at what it looks like. So our Chex Mix is out of the oven and it looks really good. If you take a peek at it, it looks a lot like Chex Mix. And there's a peanut, there's some pork rind. It's just all coated. And so what we'll do is I'll take some and just put it in a serving dish. You can see the pecan. You can see how some pieces are darker than others. And what I had done was I put it in the oven on 250 degrees and I let it go for 25 to 30 minutes. Gave it a stir with a spoon. And then I did it for a second time, gave it a stir with a spoon, and then let it go another 25 to 30 minutes. So it's about an hour and a half total. Turn the oven off, let it sit for about 30 minutes, and it was done. Let's give it a try. I love that stuff. That's going to be the hard part the rest of the day, is putting this away so that I don't devour it. I hope that if Chex Mix has been part of your holiday tradition, that you can find some pork rinds and that you can make this for your family and enjoy it.